So you're playing a game that you spent a totally healthy amount of time in. Maybe you've even spent a couple hundred more parasocially. Before you boot up your next game, you think to yourself, should I try to change things up a little bit? Maybe I should try to be more serious in this next game, trying to emulate the people that I've watched, acting as if I see life in slow motion or something. Or should you maybe stick to Vindicta? Because maybe you like her guns or gameplay mechanic. You like flying up above and shooting people down, sniping people, even though your aim is pretty darn horrible. It is not super straightforward which one is the right choice, is it? Trying to be more serious in how you play will net you more wins, which means you're gonna become less of a burden for your teammates if it's a team game, like Deadlock, let's say. And also, you will definitely get better in your games overall if you keep on trying to improve and get better each and every time. And who knows, maybe one day you can actually satisfy your dream of becoming a pro gamer. At least you're satisfying the idea that it's possible. Meanwhile, playing however you want will make you more attached to the heroes you constantly play with because you like their design maybe, you like their gameplay style, and that games will feel much more enjoyable and satisfying to you. It will also leave much more room for creativity because you're playing from behind. You're not chasing the meta. That means your hero is not necessarily better than other heroes, so you will have to think a little bit more outside of the box to keep on getting your wins. And getting those wins will sometimes become more satisfying because you're not bound by a set of rules, you're actually making up your own strategies to win, which means it's much more satisfying. A bunch of things that ultimately culminate to a much more enjoyable and fun experience in gaming overall. It is ultimately unclear which option is clearly the better one, unless you're someone who lives by a clear set of principles. You can choose to be masochistic, more competitive, and actually win more games, but you can also choose to be more selfish and play the games however you want. After all, games are supposed to be more relaxing and enjoyable, right? Let me play however I want. Regardless, it doesn't really matter what option you choose, because at most what it could do, well, unless you're a pro gamer I guess, it can only amount to a ruined Friday night for you, or even just a few hours. But what if we consider the very same question in a much wider perspective? Imagine a situation where you're the creative team for Valve's newest game, Deadlock. You are tasked to design and conceptualize the art direction for this game going forward. There's a whole wide variety of ways in which you can go about it. For example, in the initial development for this game, when it was still called Neon City, supposedly, it looked like this. This is nothing new, right? I mean, it's just realistic proportions with some cartoony feel to it, plastered on top of its cyberpunk Japan aesthetic. A lot of people already know that they enjoy the cyberpunk Japan aesthetic. Just turn down the lights and crank up the neon signs and put some Nihongo over there, and a lot of people would definitely enjoy it. Which means it comes with much lower risk, because at the very least, a huge subset of people would definitely enjoy this kind of aesthetic. Not a lot of people really hate realistic proportions, and a lot of people definitely enjoy cyberpunk aesthetic. It also means it demands much lower creativity. You don't need to think too much on how to direct this kind of art style, you just need to copy other works and it will be fine. Just tweak it a little bit so it can be more distinct. However, despite the low risk, low creative demand, it will still net quite a high reward. A lot of people will definitely still not mind the art style, and as long as the game is good, a lot of people will still keep playing the game regardless. On the other hand though, you can also choose to be more creatively expressive. You can choose to make your own art style that is unique from all the other bunches that makes your game much more stand out. However, it also means it comes with such a high risk, because even if you pour your heart and soul, your blood, sweat, and tears into creating the greatest art style that you can think of, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that other people will like it. What you like is not necessarily the same as what other people like. It also comes with high room for creative expression. If you are a creative person, this will be such a good thing because you are allowed to actually be more expressive. If you have some great ideas, this is the moment to shine. And most importantly, with this high risk, with this high creative demand, it will become that much more special to you because it is your own unique art style. It will stand out from the bunch because it's special. It's me. You are putting your heart and soul into this work, and if it succeeds, it will feel much more satisfying than just following the bunch, right? Ultimately, how Deadlock chose to go about it is a little bit of A with a little bit of B, which I think is the right way to go about it for a lot of these things. It's a bit of A because it doesn't seem that unique, right? You've definitely seen this before. However, it's a little bit of B as well because that familiarity comes from other Valve's work. So it is expressive in the sense that they're trying to express the Valve kind of art style, but it is also nothing really new because they're just adopting the same art style again here. It's nothing new. But again, it is still pretty unique because rather than a Cyberpunk Japan like their initial development, they finalized with something like New York, I don't know, Alien Invasion, is that how you call it? It's kind of this New York noir kind of art style, which kind of hits for me, maybe not for you. However, it doesn't really matter, right? Because we're talking about Valve here. They're really rich. They're much successful company. That means they can really take a huge risk and it will probably be fine. Even if Deadlock completely flops like Concord, things will be fine because most of their revenue comes from Steam anyway. So what if you're a much smaller development team? Maybe you're part of an indie game developer. Things are much different then, right? It is much more difficult to take such high risks if the significance of the success of your game means whether or not you'll be able to afford food for the next year. Maybe then you wouldn't be taking much higher risks and you would adopt the same 8-bit art style. Maybe you'd even use some pre-made assets because they've been proven to work. Then you can put in more effort on other factors that may affect the success of your game. In that situation, can you really afford to pull off another Fear and Hunger? Well, Fear and Hunger is not completely unique, is it? Well, I guess, for the option of creative expression, that doesn't really mean that you need to be completely unique anyway. You can still be inspired by other works, but it is still diverging off from the path of stuff that has been proven time and time again, so it is still unique in that sense, right? Keep in mind, Fear and Hunger wasn't a complete success in the beginning. It took a couple of years before Fear and Hunger actually saw huge success in the wide audience. It's not until Super Eyepatch Wolf created a video on it before this game actually showed up on a lot of people's radar. I don't know whether or not that's true, by the way, but I'm just gonna act as if that's the truth because it makes the story much better. If you're part of a small indie development team, can you really take the chances? Can you really take the chances just for some creative expression? Maybe you would really be more inclined to actually chase some faster success, right? You see, when the problems extend way beyond just a ruined Friday night or not, things get a little bit more complicated. What is interesting though, I feel like this is philosophy 101. It is extending questions that you ask and answer every day whether or not you're aware of it and applying it in a much macro lens of your whole life. Do you live your life for yourself or for others? Or a much more important question, should you live your life for yourself or for others? Should you be more selfish or selfless? Consider a scenario. You're going home from buying some groceries. You're carrying a lot of heavy grocery bags. You got on a train and you got yourself a seat. Great. In the next stop, you actually saw someone coming in, visibly able-bodied. They seem capable of just standing up, but they are also very visibly much older in age. If you had to take a guess, they're probably around their 80s or 70s. You look around, nobody's really giving up their seat. You look down, you're sitting on the priority seat, and your stop is still 20 minutes away. But these grocery bags are pretty darn heavy. What are you gonna do? Do you stand up and actually give up your seat for this person? Or maybe you ask someone around you to give up their seat for this person because they're much older in age. They should be prioritized, right? Or maybe, screw all that. I'm just gonna sit. These grocery bags are pretty darn heavy, and if that person really wants to sit, well, you better figure something out yourself. Imagine another scenario. You have a job. You are in a team. Your team are tasked with a project that is closing in on a deadline, which means your whole team needs to do some overtime because if you don't do overtime, you won't really make the deadline for that same project. One of your coworker, a very kind person. She's just nice, she's nice to you, she's nice to everybody. Just one of those people that is very likable and enjoyable to be around with. She is also pregnant. She is also very visibly pretty stressed out with life stuff. Maybe her husband is not there for her, or maybe these overtimes are really taking a toll on her time, her stress levels, her money, whatever. You aren't really sure exactly the reason. What do you do? Do you go out of your way to talk to your teammates and try to lighten her workload specifically? After all, she's a likable person. Your team would probably agree, won't they? Or maybe you offer yourself up specifically to take over her work desk completely. Or maybe, screw it all. Who cares? It's her choice to be pregnant. It's her responsibility. Who cares? And another scenario. 2 years into your bachelor's degree, your family of 5 is facing some financial troubles. Maybe Taylor Swift is doing another round of touring. I don't know, be creative. You think things will probably be fine if you choose to continue your degree. However, you also think, had you gone down that route, your family will be facing some financial uncertainties for the coming years. Maybe your lovely little brother and lovely little sister won't be able to make it into uni. Or maybe things will be fine in just a couple of weeks, a couple of months, you don't know for sure. What do you do? Do you stop and actually take some jobs to alleviate some of that financial burden on your family? Or maybe you keep on going and actually chase your degree, because once you have your degree, things will be fine anyway, right? Because you're gonna get a job, a better paying job, rather than the job that I can get right now. Or maybe you think it's not your problem. It's the problem of your parents. They probably should have thought about this before having 3 kids in the first place, right? Ladies and gentlemen, I really think this is just philosophy 101. A lot of philosophy is just taking up some mundane problems that you solve day in and day out and applying it to your whole life. And consider yourself as a philosopher, even though these problems are not necessarily need to be tackled right now or ever really. The answer to the question of whether or not you should be selfless or selfish is ultimately really unclear. It really depends on your context, your own personality, what you truly value. After all, you wouldn't really want to be a complete selfish prick, right? But at the same time, you don't want to be completely selfless because you don't want to keep on being stepped over. And at the same time, isn't selflessness really just selfishness at the end of the day? Because after all, you can never really live another person's perspective. Everything is within my perspective, so me doing things for other people is ultimately just for me to feel better rather than appeasing someone else. Because I can never really live their perspective, so I can never really know and be sure whether or not what I'm doing will be good for them or not. I can only imagine, but that is bound within my own lens. It is ultimately unclear, isn't it? I don't know, okay? I think a little bit of A and a little bit of B, a little bit of for me and a little bit for you can go a long way in your life. But again, ultimately, it depends, ladies and gentlemen. It depends. Thank you so much for watching. Go like, subscribe, share, whatever if you want, and bye bye. I hope you have a great rest of your day.